Dear friends, welcome to yet another installment of Strategic Power. In this video, we will address two significant military exercises conducted by NATO, which are taking place near two Russian borders, as well as the pressure exerted by Ukraine's allies, involving the deployment of troops on the ground, which has led Vladimir Putin to intensify his nuclear threats. If you are not yet subscribed to the channel, we invite you to subscribe and turn on notifications to stay up to date with the latest developments. On March 4th, NATO began its first military exercise in Finland, called Nordic Response 24, comprised of 20,000 soldiers from 13 nations, with a notable contribution from Finland with a contingent of 4,000 military personnel. This exercise will last 2 weeks and will include maneuvers in Norway and even Sweden, a country that, although not yet officially part of the alliance, had its path cleared after Hungary's recent ratification. On the same day, March 4th, the alliance announced the start of another major military exercise, also composed of 20,000 soldiers, to take place in the region known as the Suwalki Gap, an area of less than 100 kilometers that separates Belarus from the Russian territory of Kaliningrad. According to a NATO statement, in addition to the 20,000 soldiers, nearly 3,500 combat vehicles will be involved, simulating a possible Russian attack on that strategically important region. However, one must question why the alliance is conducting two exercises of such magnitude in areas so close to Russia, and what has been Vladimir Putin's response to this show of force by the alliance. In the context of the exercise taking place in Finland, the purpose is to harmonize strategies and coordinate integration with the so-called NATO standard, an extensive series of norms and standardizations that regulate everything from document writing to weapon calibers, also encompassing air, land, and naval doctrines. This initiative aims to ensure that, if necessary, all alliance members can operate jointly as a single unit. Additionally, since NATO has never conducted maneuvers in Finland before, this represents an excellent opportunity to become familiar with the specificities of the local terrain. Finland is known for its challenging geography, characterized by small lakes and marshes, constituting a particularly adverse environment for military operations in winter, with temperatures that can reach as low as -20 degrees Celsius. As for the other alliance exercise, which will take place between Poland and Lithuania in the Suwalki corridor, the objective is to reinforce the presence in an area identified as the Achilles heel of the alliance. Looking at the map, we can see that it is a region with few urban centers, and the nearest military base is almost 150 kilometers away. Therefore, in a conflict scenario, Russia, in coordination with Belarus, could potentially isolate the Baltic states through the Suwalki corridor. It is precisely to prepare for that eventuality that the aforementioned exercise involving 20,000 alliance soldiers will take place. According to NATO's statement, this exercise will explore various aspects of modern combat, with a special emphasis on logistics and the movement of troops and vehicles on roads. For this reason, the use of 3,500 vehicles is planned, which, according to the alliance, will cover approximately 2,000 kilometers of roads in Poland and Lithuania. It is not necessary to conduct an in-depth analysis to infer that these exercises, both in Finland and the Suwalki corridor, are primarily aimed at Russia. In the case of Finland, as has been discussed in other videos on this channel, the country was practically compelled to join NATO after Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. Before that invasion, the majority of Finns opposed the country's accession to the alliance, but after what happened, there was a radical change in Finnish public opinion, with the majority now supporting integration. This put an end to a long period of almost 80 years of neutrality and non-alignment, which had begun after the end of World War II. Although Putin used NATO's proximity to Russian borders as one of the arguments for the invasion of Ukraine, Russia did not react particularly hostilely to Finland's accession to the alliance in April 2023. However, since late last year, the tone of the threats uttered by Putin has gradually increased, with the Russian General Staff even announcing the reinforcement of the missile launcher detachment along the Finnish border. These NATO military exercises coincide with statements by French President Emmanuel Macron, who in late February stated that the deployment of alliance troops to Ukraine cannot be ruled out. For the French president and many other European leaders, Ukraine's struggle is not limited to its own freedom, but also to the freedom and security of the entire European continent. Many leaders believe that a Putin victory in Ukraine would pave the way for future conflicts, which could directly affect some NATO member countries, especially Finland and the Baltic states. It is precisely to prevent a Russian victory in Ukraine that President Macron declared that the deployment of troops cannot be ruled out. a statement that, as expected, deeply displeased Vladimir Putin. NATO holds a considerable numerical superiority over Russia, with 4 times more soldiers, 5 times more aircraft, and 7 times more ships. This quantitative advantage, if employed in Ukraine, would inevitably result in a defeat for Russia, leading Putin to declare that, if that were to happen, Russia would have no alternative but to resort to the use of nuclear weapons. The Russian leader even stated that NATO wouldn't even have time to blink. With Ukraine facing shortages of weapons and ammunition due to the suspension of aid by the Republican Congress of the United States, and with the possibility of Donald Trump winning the presidential elections and promising to distance himself from Europe and NATO, European countries may be forced to enter the conflict directly, even at the risk of Putin, faced with the prospect of defeat in Ukraine, opting for extreme and terrible measures. We are facing a highly volatile scenario, in which NATO and Russia are engaged in a power and ego dispute on the European borders. The large-scale military exercises conducted by NATO openly challenge Putin, while the Russian leader himself threatens to resort to the use of nuclear weapons. This juncture brings us to the brink of an unprecedented conflict, the possibility of the United States, potentially led by Trump, abandoning NATO adds a layer of complexity, leaving European countries with the difficult decision of intervening directly in the Ukrainian conflict, even at the risk of triggering a nuclear catastrophe. The current situation is more tense than ever, and the fate of humanity may be at stake at this crucial moment. Given this scenario, the question arises, is NATO overstepping boundaries, or is Putin merely bluffing? Leave your comment, analyzing this critical situation and sharing your perspectives on the topic.